Over the past week, it has become extremely clear to me that both a lot of people in just general Twitch viewing and streamers in the Twitch community have no idea what sexual harassment is. Like, I've talked about it repeatedly online. I talked about it on panel, like on a panel discussion last week. I talked about it repeatedly when the Destiny community started sending goons to me. And I've just come to the conclusion that we need to do a little education stream. Muddy Dumplings, my therapist had emergency gallbladder surgery, and so I'm actually going to be doing the coming out tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm a little on edge tonight, and I'm probably not going to be okay tomorrow. But, we'll see. We're going to cover Chud. No, I don't care what Chud Logic said about my panel. Still working off the Cartman definition from South Park? Yo. I don't watch South Park, so that reference goes over my head. How am I doing? I am doing okay today. But yeah, no, hello Golden Coin 100. I don't really care what other people had to say on this issue, because a lot of people didn't seem to be all that well versed in what sexual harassment is, or what what constitutes sexual harassment, or really have a firm grasp on any of the details or what people were trying to communicate around it. And so I think it's hard to have a conversation about anything when, if you're saying, hello, you have sexually harassed someone, the instant go-to for everyone is to assume that the person who sexually harassed somebody is like an intentional, like, hand-grubbing monster, like, no one, I've said this before, but, like, people are people, right? No one's waking up in the morning going, gee whiz, what a great day for sexually harassing my coworkers. Like, nobody does that. Instead, they feel feelings for other people, they think somebody looks really hot, or they don't think very much about another person and just, kind of are going about their day doing what they want to do, and in the process, they hurt somebody. Like, that's generally what sexual harassment is. People just going around, doing what they want to do, and inadvertently hurting somebody. Exactly. Catcalling is sexual harassment. But a lot of people who do the catcalling aren't like, hey guys, watch this, I'm gonna catcall that person on the street. Like, no one's doing that. They see a lady they think is pretty, and they're like, hey baby! Like, I don't know, what's like a catcall phrase? Like, that ass though! Like, I don't know, something like that. Like, what that bum do? You can tell I haven't been catcalled all that often. But when I am catcalled, it makes me deeply uncomfortable. And if it's a recurring thing, that is definitely a problem that needs to be addressed. Yeah, what that tongue do? So it's a lot easier, I think, for some people to understand what sexual harassment is when it's extremely blatant and obvious, like walking up to somebody and giving them like a back massage that they didn't ask for, or like I'm just gonna grab an example at random, groping a woman who doesn't want to be touched on stream in public, things like that. Pretty obvious acts of sexual harassment, right? And oh gosh, my aunt sexually harassed the pesticide guy the last time he visited by asking if we'd ordered a stripper by saying he looks like a man in she likes a man in uniform. Jesus. Yeah, that's not okay. Um, yeah, I don't know what Chud Logic thinks, and I like Chud Logic just fine, but I have seen so many takes on this from Twitch politics and the people who watch Twitch politics that are such absolute dog shit. I'm just not engaging with a lot of them anymore. A lot of those takes, at the very least. Um, so I put together a stream tonight, and we're gonna dive into this topic of sexual harassment. Um, Honestly, don't care what any person who identifies as a cis dude thinks. Yeah, I I don't know. I had higher expectations, and I probably shouldn't have had as high of expectations as I did. Um, have I seen Dylan's tweet today about this? How he's walking everything back? Yeah, I did see that. I don't have comments about that. I'm aside from saying that I'm disappointed. But I also understand where he's coming from, but I'm not going to explain more than that. And that's the other thing. I am trying to talk about this in general terms, and after we've covered this entire topic, I will get back around to talking about like the Prime Kai stuff, so that we can apply the information that we learned along the way. You know, this is an educational journey. All right, let's learn, shall we? So, for a lot of people, I feel like their understanding of sexual harassment largely is something that originates as like a joke. And we're gonna watch an example of this said joke and talk about it a little bit, okay? We're actually gonna watch a skit from Saturday Night Live. This is almost a decade old at this point. And we're going to talk a little bit about it. And the sketch is called Sexual Harassment and You. Yeah. Now, it is still a funny sketch, largely because so many men still think this way. Think that the difference between someone who can get away with sexual harassment and somebody who can't is essentially the guy being handsome. If you're handsome enough, you can sexually harass anybody and get away with it, right? Like, and yeah, that is on some level like some kind of incel logic, except we need to kind of ask a couple questions here. First off, what was the perspective of this sketch, right? The perspective of this sketch was from the man's point of view, right? And so when we look at the woman's point of view, the big difference between what you do and don't do, the two situations, was the consent of the woman involved. Obviously, as the sketch goes along, it gets more ridiculous, like just looking at a woman and saying hi is sexual harassment. No. So this is really difficult because it does the topic of sexual harassment goes into the topic of consent, and specifically respecting the consent of other people involved. One of the major definitional aspects of sexual harassment are unwelcome interactions, like unwelcome sexual advances, unwelcome romantic advances, unwelcome like focusing on an employee or a person, unwelcome actions on your part. And the unwelcome part is the consent of the person involved on the receiving end of your interactions. So when we keep going, keep that in mind, okay? because we have another segment here. It's from the like shortly after like the Harvey Weinstein trial began or accusations began. CBS had a morning show about why are men afraid to talk about sexual harassment. We're gonna watch this this short segment real quick.
The Me Too movement is not only bringing the issue of sexual harassment to light, but also highlighting what role men have in the discussion. Our Alex Wagner recently spoke with a group of 5 accomplished men about the responsibility they feel to address sexual harassment and gender equality. One of them was producer
and
Judd
even
Apatow.
Attractive guys can be
Is
creepy.
it
Exactly.
awkward when you confront another man about sexual harassment, Judd?
I don't think so. I mean, when you run a television set, you have a lot of employees, and you're really trying to create an environment where everybody there feels comfortable that if they have an issue, they could go to the people who run the set, and it will be taken care of. It really is one of those situations where I think the head people set a tone.
For decades, author and educator Jackson Katz has called on the men to set the tone and speak out. He delivered this message in a popular TED Talk called Violence Against Women, It's a Men's Issue. That talk has received more than 3.5 million views.
We'll be watching this later, by the way.
There's so many men who care deeply about these issues, but caring deeply is not enough. We need more men with the guts, with the courage, with the strength, with the moral integrity to bring.
And frankly, guys, we need more men to talk about this, specifically because of the patriarchal system that we live in. We need male allies to actually speak up and talk about these issues. Because if they don't get talked about by men, a lot of men won't, like, will have like this mental filter where they just like kind of ignore or downplay things that women talk about. And so we need those inside men, as it were, to actually broach this topic so that we can get actual change into the systems. Yeah, it's legitimately concerning how many people don't understand the concept of impact over intent. Exactly, Maddie. We're gonna be getting to that real soon.
Silence and challenge each other and stand with women, not against them.
Jackson Katz is the founder and president of MVP Strategies. He's provided sexual harassment and violence training for several sports teams and the military. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a men's issue. What does that mean?
It means that historically people have seen issues like sexual harassment and domestic violence and sexual assault as women's issues that some good men help out with, but a big part of my work is helping people to think differently about this subject, and I would say that...
Well, largely, Commie Brad, I think it's a function of the fact that when most men talk about issues related to sexual harassment, they don't have a good grasp on what sexual harassment is, and are generally telling women to shut up or like stop talking about it. Like that's kind of the issue. Most men, when they talk about this, aren't interested in having an actual discussion about the underlying issue. And by the way, we're gonna get to this. This isn't just an issue for men sexually harassing other men or women. It's also an issue of women in power also adopt the attitudes and actions of people in positions of authority, other people in power, which tend to be men. And so women also can adopt these same attitudes towards sexual harassment that their male coworkers have, or other men in various industries have. And so this is an issue that if men don't solve it, women are going to adopt the same types of behaviors. And that's not good. We don't want that to happen either.
These aren't women's issues that good men help out with. They're actually men's issues. Men have an incredibly important role to play. Men are committing the vast majority of the abuse, the harassment, and the violence.
No, I think it was a good question, Brad. I appreciate it.
And until men stand with women as their partners and allies in this work, we're only going to...
In fact, that's why I picked this clip of 5 men talking about sexual harassment.
Cleaning up after the fact. We need to do a whole lot more.
So if I'm a man, which turns out I am, and I am not I'm not doing anything, and I might think, well, what's my role? So how am I supposed to think differently?
All men, I think, at all levels of society
to it,
and
Natalie
whatever their
Marie.
sphere of influence, have to make it clear to the people around them that abusing women in any way, verbally, emotionally, physically, sexually, is unacceptable, not just because it's illegal and they're going to get in trouble, but because the peer culture doesn't accept it, other men as well as women don't accept it. This is a message that adult men need to be sending, not just to each other, although that's true, but to young men and boys who have to hear it from men as well as women, that the way to treat women, treating women with respect is not an option. It is mandatory. It's just how you treat people with respect and dignity. And if you don't do it, you're going to be in trouble, not just, again, with the authorities, but with your friends, with your peers, with your teammates, with your classmates, with your colleagues. If we can change the social norms in male culture that allow this behavior to go on, you're going to see a significant diminution, because it's not about individual sick men who are doing this. A lot of the men who are committing these acts of abuse and harassment are otherwise normal men.
You said they're mostly normal men.
That's right.
Perpetrators outside of this are normal men in all situations.
Huh. Interesting. Exactly. Kind of like the point I made at the very beginning. People don't wake up in the morning and say, golly gee, what a great day for sexually harassing someone. No. They just get up in the morning and brush their teeth and act like a normal person. They just don't have the awareness that they need to know that they're making other people uncomfortable, or the culture around them has taught them that making other people uncomfortable isn't their problem.
That's
What
right.
do you mean by that? Because what is our perception and what do you mean?
The perception, I think, is that some, Freddy Krueger-like twisted character is committing these acts of aggression or abuse, like on college campuses. Rapists are some monstrous individuals. They're normal guys. Most guys who commit rape on college campuses are otherwise normal guys. They go to class or they don't go to class. They're in fraternities or they're not. They're athletes or they're not. They're just normal guys. But the question that begs is, why are otherwise normal guys doing this, and what does it mean to be normal in this society? In other words, if it's not just crazy individuals, but actually much broader than that, then it implicates the various institutions of the society that shape what we expect from men and boys.
So I'm really curious, because you pioneered this bystander training. What does that mean? How do you do it?
Well, the bystander approach is a way to...
Well, Draco Wrath, no. See, that's what we need to understand. And that's what we really need to understand, especially when it comes to crime. Rapists are normal people. They're not boogie monsters that exist just out in the world. They aren't like these ethereal beings that come out of the swamp and have their way with someone. No, they're normal people. And that's what makes it worse, right? But also, that's what gives us a chance of being able to change the behavior. Because it's not just something that, appears without explanation and then equally disappears, right? This is something that we have a chance to do something about. To teach people to be better. To change the culture and the conditions around social interactions so that we aren't raping or sexually harassing people anymore. We can change that. And that's the great thing. If we just write it down to oh, some people are just monsters, that's something that absolves us of the duty to actually try and make things better. Yeah, rapists can be your friends, your family, your spiritual leader, your professor, your they can take so many different forms. And they're people at the end of the day. They're people that did horrible things, but we need to recognize their humanity, because in recognizing their humanity, we have hope for other people in the future, so that we can stop making situations that give rise to rapists. Yeah, and that's but that's kind of what we need to acknowledge, right, Draco Wrath? We need to acknowledge kind of our position within these systems and recognize that there are some things that we can do within our day-to-day lives, within our social interactions with other people, that can head this off at the pass, as it were. We can change things for the better. And that's empowering. Exactly, Matty Cakes. Recognizing the humanity in this also gives a path to redemption.
To move beyond the perpetrator-victim binary. In other words, instead of focusing on men as perps and women as victims, or women as perpetrators and men as victims, or any combination, it focuses on everybody in a given peer culture as what we call a bystander, which is a friend, a teammate, a classmate, a colleague, a coworker, right?
Almost like an honor code.
Yeah, on a code, sure. But it's giving people tools to challenge and interrupt abusive behavior when they see it, and not just at the point of attack.
So give us an example. Give us an example.
You're a guy and you're hanging out with a group of guys and there are no women in the room, and one or two of the guys start making sexist and degrading comments about girls or women. Instead of laughing along or being silent in the face of that, it's interrupting that by saying, hey, that's not funny, man. You can't talk about like that. It's just like with racism. If you're a white person and you're hanging out with a group of white people and one or two of those white people start making racist comments, if you don't challenge them on that, in a sense, your silence is a form of consent and complicity in their racism.
What the president called locker room talk.
Yeah.
You made an interesting observation about the Golden Globes the other night that I hadn't thought of until you pointed it out.
Yeah, the Golden Globes was an incredible moment. It wasn't just because of the awards for the people who did great work. It was an incredible historical and cultural moment where so many women were coming forward and talking publicly in a very, with a bright spotlight about not only experiences that they had, but highlighting the experiences of women all over the world. And it's a great historical moment, but yet all the men who came up to get awards and present didn't say anything. They didn't say anything. And on the red carpet, yes, some of them said, we support women. I'm very proud of her. What we didn't hear from men, either on the arrival or from the stage at all, was men saying, as a man, I'm in a position here because of the bright spotlight to say, as a man, I support women and I'm going to do whatever I can to challenge other men to stand up and speak up and support women and make this a movement that is transcendent.
Why do you think they didn't say anything?
I think a lot of men don't know what to say. I think a lot of men haven't ever heard other men say this, so they haven't seen it modeled. I think a lot of men are afraid of stepping in it. In other words, they don't know what to say, and therefore they worry that they're going to say the wrong thing and then get pushed back. So I think that there's a generous way of thinking about why men didn't say anything. Okay. Not that they're perpetrators, but they just don't know what to say. And I think part of what we're doing here is just showing men, you can talk about this.
And please talk about it.
Yes, please talk about it.
Jackson Katz, good to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if we have an educational program, right, that teaches us on a social level, right, that belittling women isn't okay, that treating women as objects isn't okay, that obtaining consent is necessary, we can make it so that people know the things that they're doing are right or wrong, right? Like, there are some people who go through their day-to-day lives and they don't actually have an idea that, staring at that woman repeatedly that works across from them every day, and because you think they're really pretty and you're sexually attracted to them, that staring at them every day probably isn't okay, right? Like, if we have this overarching social understanding, we don't necessarily have to have these classes where people go in and are like, hey guys, it's not okay to pinch the butt of your coworker. Yeah. And the other thing is, let's see, you got to use your peripherals. By schools, I mean training tapes and shit. All right. And now here's the other thing, right? I've seen a lot of people talking about the legality of sexual harassment. And I feel like I really need to emphasize this, that you can sexually harass someone without it being an actual crime. In fact, to make the sexual harassment a crime takes an enormous amount of harassment. When we're talking about it, it takes explicit, sustained interactions that verge on abuse, interpersonal abuse, right? Hey, Ravana! Hello. Thank you for the raid. Hello, everybody. Hello, lovelies. For those of you who don't know, my name is Riverboat Jack. I stream every weekday at 8 p.m. Central. And today we are talking about sexual harassment because apparently there are a lot of people who don't understand what sexual harassment is, or how to avoid doing it, or even why we should talk about it in the first place. Yes, Goblin Lurker, thank you for the follow. Just Belmont, too, thank you for the follow. Khalil, thank you for the follow. And yeah, everybody, please do hit the follow button. We are trying to make partner. We're chugging along. And it was my birthday yesterday, so I'm using the vestiges of my birthday powers to make you heed my commands. Pure Alicia, thank you for the follow. Me touching your butt equals sexual harassment. True. But only if I don't want you to touch my butt. See, that's the thing, right? Sexual harassment is contingent on a lack of consent from the person on the receiving end of your actions. Consent is king, and that is one of the key things that we need to understand about sexual harassment, is that at the end of the day, sexual harassment comes down to a question of consent. It is about unwanted attention, unwanted actions conducted towards an individual. And you can avoid unwanted, perpetrating those actions by making sure that you have the consent of the person involved. So, yeah, consent is required. Exactly. Women just want to live. True. True. Now, here we are, right? So we're talking about this, and a lot of people seem to think that, well, if sexual harassment occurred, well, clearly it needs to be brought to the attention of the court. There needs to be a lawsuit of some kind. There needs to be a legal investigation. And that's not how sexual harassment works, because, goddamn, when was the last time, like, people called police on individual catcallers? Okay? Like, yo, it's not even worthwhile. Like, that case isn't going to go to court. Like, the police probably aren't even going to show up for that. When we're talking about these issues, you can sexually harass somebody without it becoming a legal, like, kerfuffle. In fact, there's a piece in The Conversation titled, from last year, by the way, titled, "Worried About Accidentally Harassing a Woman? Don't Be." It's written by a lawyer who specializes in harassment law, and basically their opinion is, hey, it actually takes a lot to prosecute somebody on the grounds of sexual harassment. And that's specifically because harassment law is not like a civility code. It's not like you have to be nice, otherwise you get arrested. Like, that's not how it works. It has to, like, go into the I guess the territory of being a hostile or abusive environment. And that takes a lot. Like, the burden of proof is actually quite high to establish something like that, right? And so you can't just be like, oh, you know, this guy stared at me, and so now I'm going to sue him. You know, that's not how it works. Now, in the defense of people who think that's how it works, right? Corporations in their training often do train that, like, little infringements on somebody else's person should always be viewed as, like, sexual harassment and not okay. However, this is largely a byproduct of corporations wanting to be proactive in preventing their employees from sexually harassing each other, or sexually harassing customers, or etc., right? Like, or clients or whatever. This is a behavior that is designed to minimize their losses or potential losses, right? The corporations are looking after their own butts when they're training to tell people not to sexually harass each other, because they care about their bottom line. They care about the profits, not so much the interpersonal beefs. And this is really one of those things that creates this impression that we saw in the initial sketch video that we watched, like, oh, that guy looked at you weird and said hi, time to call HR. Like, no, that's not gonna go anywhere, right? But that's the impression a lot of people have. And so we need to really hammer home that you can sexually harass somebody without it being a legal case. That is possible, but also that the implication that anything you might possibly do in the workplace could be sexual harassment is largely something that is overemphasized by corporations. So now that we've covered that issue, right? We're going to watch a video from a TED Talk called The Power of Us, and it is about sexual harassment. So this, I think it's pretty important and pretty core to what we're going to be talking about after this. So let's keep going.
Sexual harassment
Ooh, that is
is
loud.
pervasive. There is no industry or institution that is immune to it. It happens in companies and universities, on factory floors and on movie sets, in restaurant kitchens and congressional offices. And it hurts so many people. At its core, sexual harassment is about the unequal power relations between men and women.
I'm gonna pause it right there, because this is the fundamental issue, right? It is an issue of power imbalances. When we have power imbalances, and we have a culture that doesn't necessarily teach men that they need to, for example, respect the boundaries of women, or respect the consent of women, or that they are going to be able to get away with doing something inappropriate, or that in fact doing something inappropriate is awesome, or something like that. The power imbalance allows men to commit more harm against women than they would otherwise be able to get away with, right? And this also works in the reverse. If women are in that higher power imbalance, and there is that culture around them that I would point out is largely patriarchal, women can also fall into the same behavior patterns of sexually harassing men or sexually harassing other women. So this isn't unique in any way. It is a societal problem, which is good because that means we can fix it.
At school, at work, and in society. In other words, gender inequality is both the cause of sexual harassment and the consequence of it. And what this means is that we will never have full equality. Women will never be fully equal to men as long as this behavior continues. So if equality is what we want, then we need to decide right now, in this moment together, to change things. Now, change begins with a very clear understanding of the problem to be solved. And in this case, the problem to be solved is, why does sexual harassment keep happening? It's been illegal for decades. It's a form of sex discrimination, and the cost to companies and individuals is enormous. So why is it still so pervasive? There are many studies on sexual harassment, but not many of us know about them. And this really concerns me, because in order to create the kind of change that we need, we must understand this research, understand.
I am just pausing it to point out that this weird emoji face is extremely distracting from her overall point.
The root causes and understand why some companies and some industries have more of a problem with it than others. And this is the research I've come to share with you. And what the research has found is that sexual...
Barbarian Wrath, my main question is, get money out of it how? How are you getting money out of it? Like, women don't get money when they claim that they've been sexually harassed. Instead, they just get more harassment or death threats. Like, women in the Twitch politics community have gotten death threats just for standing up for somebody who was sexually harassed. Like, what profit was there in that? They just got death threats. Are death threats currency now? I don't understand. Yeah, if you have prominent examples of, like, somebody who got rich and famous off of being sexually harassed, I would love to know.
Harassment is more likely to occur in organizations with these 3 characteristics. Male-dominated,
well, usually people don't settle cases unless they're guilty as shit. Like, you wouldn't... For example, I wouldn't settle a case with somebody for, like, if they were claiming, like, I sexually assaulted them, and they had no evidence of that, right? Like, no, you just take them to court and win.
Super hierarchical.
Buying new jewelry with my death threats, right? Yeah, I got a bunch of death threats this week, or last week. Can I use them to shop at the death threat store?
Forgiving of bad behavior. Now, it's more common in male-dominated organizations because these environments often have so-called locker room cultures, characterized by aggressive and competitive behaviors, where sexualized talk and crude jokes undermine women and exclude them. In comparison to women, men can have a harder time recognizing when women are being treated in sexist or unfair ways.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
So all of this sets the stage for sexual harassment. Because in these contexts, professionalism can give way to bro-like behaviors, where talk about what happened at the bar last night can mean that women are treated as sexualized pawns and not as valued work colleagues. And if men are less likely to label what other men are doing as inappropriate,
well, yeah, but I guess, Barbarian Wrath, my question would then be, like, why do you think that women are claiming that they've been sexually harassed or sexually assaulted, and there's somehow, like, this industry of getting payouts, right? Like, if you don't have examples of it, why do you think that way? I'm just asking, like, have a little bit of that introspection, because it doesn't make sense to me.
This can make things worse. This is also really about dominance. In hyper-masculine settings, when women are rising up the ranks, men can feel threatened. In fact, the most common form of sexual harassment is not the solicitation of sex.
Important here, most common form of sexual harassment is not the solicitation of sex.
It's what's called gender harassment. And this is when victims are demeaned by sexist comments, obscene gestures, offensive material like pornography. And what's happening here is not about sexual desire. It's about communicating to women in subtle and not so subtle ways that they don't belong.
I agree with, like, half of that sentiment. I think that that's true in some cases, but not all of them.
Women who violate traditional feminine ideals by holding what's considered to be a man's job, or women who behave in more masculine ways by being assertive, aggressive, holding a supervisory role, are more likely to experience this kind of harassment. It's in these instances when women are rising up in the world that harassment becomes a way to knock them down a peg.
By the way, just think of how many online harassment campaigns against women that you've seen have largely been fueled by just that impulse, right? Been fueled by the impulse to, this woman, she's just irritating. She's just a little, she's too uppity, I don't like her. She just talks too much, she's too loud. Because I feel like I've seen that over and over and over again. And I'm not that old, guys. I've been on the internet since, like, I don't know, for like maybe 20 years now. And I like, think of how people reacted to Anita Sarkeesian doing light feminist critique of video games. Or think about Zoe Quinn with the light challenging of what, like, games could be by making a game about depression. Or Hillary Clinton, or Anna Kasparian, or, like, any prominent female figure in politics. Like, it happens so often. So often. It's ridiculous. Now, I will say Hillary Clinton is irritating, but it's because she's a neo-lib. Like, that's why Hillary Clinton is irritating. Yeah, why are you being so emotional? Calm down. Like, Destiny can go on his stream and, like, call people fucking morons and, like, yell at them for, like, 2 hours straight. And, but like, a woman raises her voice, like, one time. OMG, she's so shrill. She's so mannish. Oh God. Disgusting. I can't believe how irritating she is. Yeah, AOC, another great example. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, Avery always. Yeah. The Zoe Quinn harassment did escalate with the stuff from her ex, Aaron Gajoni. But we need to remember that the initial hatred of Zoe Quinn came because she was trying to get her free game about depression through Steam's greenlight process, which doesn't even exist anymore. But the reason people hated her initially was because her game wasn't, like, fun enough. Like, it was about having depression. Like, that was the reason so many people hated her enough to jump on board the Aaron Gajoni's, like, weird screed. From the UK, yeah. I've been getting a bunch of sexually explicit and harassing DMs and messages over the past weeks. I have no idea why or how to make it stop. Yeah, like, if you're a nobody on the internet and you, like, or relatively unknown, and you make, like, a tweet that happens to go viral, God help you, because so many people will, like, come into your DMs and basically tell you to, like, go fuck yourself and, like, sexually harass you, oddly enough. So I just want us to keep this in mind as we go forward.
Harassment is also more likely in really hierarchical environments where there are large power differences between levels. And abuse happens in these settings because it turns out that power has a corrupting impact on people. People in power tend to do as they please. They don't take other people's feelings into consideration. They don't take no for an answer. And research has found that in the minds of men who are inclined to harass, power and sex are closely connected. So what happens then is that many men in positions of power think they can do what they want. So they do. They behave in abusive ways. And at the same time, their subordinates who are lower down in the hierarchy, who are being mistreated, are often powerless to speak up. A kind of situation with a high probability for harassment is when powerful individuals can make or break an underling's career. When a movie producer can cast an unknown actress into a starring role. A venture capitalist can provide funding to a woman entrepreneur. A professor can write a letter of recommendation for a student. When the perpetrator holds the key to your future, it can be impossible to come forward or fight back. And over again, harassers are getting away with it because their power is shielding them from both discovery and punishment. The third factor, and the...
By the way, think of how many people have in like the Twitch space, but also in like YouTube, etc., have abused that very power dynamic that she was just talking about to get something out of like a fan. This is why, by the way, a lot of people say don't date your fans, because that complex power differential is really, it warps a lot of things. It warps a lot of things. And when we're talking about this, like, it is one of degrees, right? Like, a Twitch streamer with, like, 1 million followers or something might have more of a warped perspective than a Twitch streamer with, like, 20,000 followers or 5,000 followers, you know? Like, that's, like, that is just part of the power dynamic that exists, right? I don't want to break the mood, but I forget. I hope your birthday was nice and pleasant. Conoclast, it was nice and pleasant, and then I got really sad and drank my whiskey. Yeah, exactly. Like, Cuomo got away with what he got away with for years because he held more institutional power. Donald Trump got away with sexual harassment for years because he had that kind of wealth and social cachet. Like, this is a society-wide problem. It's about denying personhood, be it race, a gender, or any group. Yeah, exactly. It's what she said. It's that people in power start to lose empathy for people who are, in a way, beneath them in terms of, like, power dynamics, right? It is something that is scary, frankly, but it also explains so much.
Single biggest predictor of sexual harassment is how permissive an organization is of this behavior. A permissive organization is one where employees feel like it's risky to come forward. They don't think their complaints will be taken seriously. They don't think the perpetrator will face any consequences. And the gist of this research is that bad behavior leads to more bad behavior. When codes of professional conduct are crossed and nothing happens, this is a green light opening the door to further misconduct. And this is exactly what happened at Uber and at Fox News.
And at Blizzard. True. The Blizzard situation is one of the most egregious I've ever heard of, by the way. Literally harassing coworkers to death. And keep in mind, also, you can sexually harass people who aren't your coworkers, guys. Like, that happens. That's something that is not uncommon. You can create sexual harassment environments in places that are not your workplace. Like, this is largely another reason why she's talking in general terms about organizations and codes of conduct. Organization, like, whatever your organization is, whether it's a workplace, a volunteer organization, a sports league, whatever, you need to have these codes of conduct so that you can discourage creating an environment that is conducive to this kind of behavior. And there needs to be professional codes of conduct to avoid creating, again, spaces where people feel empowered or in some way socially encouraged to develop sexually harassing behavior. Comic-Con, yeah. I'm really glad we're talking about this. I'm really glad. And I feel like a lot of you guys are listening, and that's making my heart glad. You know, this is a tough topic, and I know a lot of people don't want to engage with it. And I know that there's at least part of this like lack of engagement on some people's parts comes from, you know, an awareness of what they did in the past and not really wanting to recognize that, you know, what they did in the past was sexual harassment, you know? Like, I know I don't like thinking about how I've mistreated people in the past. I know I don't like thinking about times I might have made somebody uncomfortable. But, you know, we need to have this kind of self-reflection in order to make the world a better place, in order to stop this from happening and to stop this kind of cycle, this cyclical nature of sexual harassment.
At Uber, when Susan Fowler, an engineer there, repeatedly told HR about the harassment she experienced, she was told that no actions would be taken because the perpetrator was a top performer. At Fox News, Bill O'Reilly got another $25 million a year contract despite having settled a harassment case and despite 21st Century Fox knowing about the allegations. And these were not events at each of these companies. They reflected larger problems. After an investigation, Uber ended up firing 20 people for things like bullying, harassment, and discrimination. And in addition to Bill O'Reilly, Fox News CEO Roger Ailes and Fox News host Eric Bolling both left the organization amid allegations of sexual harassment.
I know that there is some buffering going on, guys. I don't...
Again, tolerance of bad behavior leads to more bad behavior. So whether or not a company tolerates sexual harassment, it's leadership. When leaders take this issue seriously, when they promptly investigate complaints, when they make sure that the perpetrator faces consequences, even when they are a top performer customer and
I don't know why it's doing this, guys. I'm not dropping frames. It's just buffering.
Important client, such likely to happen. The odds of it happening go up when leaders ignore misconduct, when they discourage people from moving forward, and when they themselves are harassers. Leader of a company or a country, harasser in chief, that reached a code red threat level.
It's a little bit cringy, but her point of the day is essentially solid, which is, yeah, have people in positions of power who are extremely permissive of this behavior. It's going to result in more people participating in sexual harassment behavior. It's pretty simple, delivered in a bit, but we can keep going.
Now, if holding power of who is a harasser, then vulnerability is a hallmark of who gets targeted and why victims keep silent. The waitress minimum wage who has to put up with sexist comments from customers. The woman who is sexually assaulted in the fields and then threatened into silence by her employer. Vulnerable women among us. Those with less education who hold low-paid service jobs and minorities of all kinds targeted. And few victims ever come forward because of legitimate concerns that retribution put them out of a job. So now that we know more about all of this, what do we do? What can leaders do, and what can we as individuals do? Now again,
well, yeah, Wrath, yeah, absolutely. Companies are always out for their bottom line. Like, always. That's why we probably need better education schools rather than allowing companies to educate employees on what is sexual harassment.
And this is all about power. If large power imbalances are a root cause of sexual harassment, we need to focus our efforts on evening out the scale. Since mated structures uphold a system of sexual harassment, then we need to change the structures. We need more women.
More female drone pilots.
having more women in management won't eliminate the problem. Women can be perpetrators too. But when you have more women at the highest level, this creates greater equity in the power men and women hold inside organizations, and therefore in society just more. And some studies indicate that when you have leadership, you have more gender equality inside companies and more inclusive practice.
This is probably the cringiest part of the video. This part of the video is more about how we can to allow the capitalist power differentials to continue and make this slightly better, but like it's a problem, right? Like the power differentials don't go away, and she even that, and that's because she's afraid of tackling the central issue, which is that and private ownership of these companies and the hierarchical nature of companies is what breeds a lot of this behavior. Now, if we had more democratic structures fueled by democracy within our company structures, that's something, a lot of the problems that we're seeing, right? Technically, I'm an FFA, drone pilot. Entramo, you're so... So, what we need to change the fundamental way, like she said, we need to change the structures of society. But she's not quite willing far enough to say, like, we need, you know, to pick up your hammers and sickles, march on capitalism today. No, she's not willing to say that. She wants to compromise, and she wants to more women in charge of companies. And frankly, that's not the answer at all. The answer is to have men and women and non-binary folk in the same boat, collectively running the places they work at via democracy, democratic co-ops, flat power structures, flat organizations where possible. Like, we can make so many changes to the structure of our organizations to stop workplace sexual harassment. But a lot of people aren't willing to go there, at least not yet.
Practices like better work-life policies. More women and more diversity at every level of an organization can do a lot to alter these hyper-masculine environments.
Good night, Orpheus, AFCON.
Take this issue seriously. When leaders take visible and firm stance that sexual harassment won't be tolerated.
Oh, and Raiders, if you can refresh the stream so I get credit for your lovely eyeballs, I would very much appreciate it.
Less likely to happen. People experience less harassment, and they're more likely to come forward. How do you know when leaders are taking this seriously? You know it when they clearly define what sexual harassment is and what the consequences are. When they make sure that employees know how to come forward. When they ensure that confidentiality will be maintained, retribution for speaking up will be prohibited. So that's what leaders can do.
Well, middle management and executives wouldn't get ridiculous salaries. That's the point.
What can we as individuals do? The sad news about all of this is that equality is so pervasive that we often don't even see it. In fact, certain sexual harassment, like unwanted touching or sexist comments, are so that women and girls don't even call it sexual harassment. Think about that. Sexism and certain forms of sexual harassment are so normalized, which from another day at school or just another day at work. This has to change. So if you hear people excusing inappropriate touching at school, oh, boys will be boys, call that out. When you hear comments made at work, call that out. And when you see someone being mistreated, talk to them what happened and make sure that they understand that what happened is because none of this is okay and no one should, that it's normal. Social patterns are not accidents. When surveys find that between 40 and 60% of women experience harassment, this is not random. This is a result of systemic issues, of deep-seated cultural beliefs that devalue women and objectify.
Or at the very least, and this is something brought up on the panel last week, and I think is really telling, right? Men understand what consent is when it comes to other men, right? Men understand consent when it comes to other men, whether that's other men them, other men saying sexual comments to direct them, whether it is any of that, right? But for some reason, when it comes to women, the issue of consent interactions seems to be much less important. Much less important. And look, social interactions are difficult to navigate. I'll be one of the first people to admit that. Like, I've definitely screwed up. I've definitely had issues with communication in my, like, romantic relationships, my professional relationships. Like, it happens, right? But we, for whatever reason, have such a knee-jerk response to talking about sexual harassment that it just doesn't get talked about, or people assume what it is, and they don't. Not really. So we're going to keep talking about it.
We all have a role to play in changing that. If you're listening, well, I've never harassed anyone, or I've never been a victim, for a second think that you're not a part of this. Social depends entirely on people noticing that something's wrong, deciding it's a problem, and coming to believe that they have a personal need to change things for the better. You cannot be a passive bystander in all of this, because our silence is allowing it to continue. And the change that we want will require all of us to take stands where we can and when we can. When powerful people abuse others, it's because they don't think the rules apply. So we need to be the ones to take their power away and hold them accountable through our consumer power, through our voting power, through the stories we tell about the things that happen to us. Speaking truth to power by believing each other, by being the bystander who enters. The power of us is powerful enough to create long-lasting change. And this is how we give the people who often have none. By coming together and using our collective power to say, me too, time's up, and this stops here.
Yeah. No, I think this was, I think this is a great talk that gives a lot of context what sexual harassment is, the power dynamics specifically of sexual harassment. Obviously, there are still problems with it, a bit too libby for my take, but I think generally this is a great thing to educate ourselves on, right? Real quick, I'm restarting my Chrome because I have a feeling Chrome is fucking everything. So we'll try and fix that. Sorry, everybody. There we go. Okay. We're back. I can see chat again. That was a good talk, but God said true. True. We're going to get into more here. So, the things that I repeatedly kept making reference to, and apparently this did not, apparently restarting Chrome didn't fix the buffering issue. Why Twitch keeps buffering? I'm really sorry, everybody. Is there an anti-masker? No. We're talking about sexual... Yeah, Moro, look, it's probably on my end, but I don't know what's causing it. Doesn't say I've dropped any frames, so it's something else. Entirely sure what. Let me check real quick. I'm gonna close a lot of things. Did I just break my connection? No? Looks like we're all good. What software reporter tool? Shit. What the heck? Alright. Okay. I think I fixed whatever that was. I did not. It just lagged again. Yeah, I guess Bezos won me, so give me more money, I guess. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully, whatever I did worked. Barbarian Wrath, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. Also, Dragon Princess, thank you for the 40 minutes ago. My bad. Well, that didn't work. My connection is excellent, and it does not feel like... But I guess I'm gonna blame Twitch on this one, guys. Alright. So, we finally arrive to the central question of today's stream. What is sexual harassment? Chat, some answers. What is sexual harassment? Fix your shit, Jeff. True. All right. Well, since all of you are talking about glitching, I guess I will answer the question myself with this document from the UN. So, what is sexual harassment? The EEOC has defined sexual harassment in its guidelines as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature when submission to such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of an individual's employment, or submission to or rejection of such conduct by an individual is used as a basis for employment decisions affecting such individual, or such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment. Unwelcome behavior is the critical word. Unwelcome does not mean involuntary. A victim may consent or agree to certain conduct and actively participate in it, even though it is offensive and objectionable. Therefore, sexual conduct is unwelcome whenever the person subjected to it considers it unwelcome. Whether the person in fact welcomed a request for a date, sex-oriented comment, or joke depends on all the circumstances. So, again, it is literally a question of consent. Are you consenting? Are you consenting to sexual comments? Are you cool with like sexual jokes? Then guess what? It's okay for it's like okay for someone to make sexual jokes with you. But it might not be okay with another person in a different context, right? It shouldn't just be about employment, and it's not. It's not. Sexual harassment includes many things: actual or attempted rape or sexual assault, unwanted pressure for sexual favors, unwanted deliberate touching, leaning over, cornering, or pinching, unwanted sexual looks or gestures, unwanted letters, telephone calls, or material of a sexual nature, unwanted pressure for dates, unwanted sexual teasing, jokes, remarks, or questions, referring to an adult as a girl, hunk, doll, babe, or honey. I think those are just examples. Whistling at somebody, catcalls, sexual comments, turning work discussions to sexual topics, sexual innuendos or stories, asking about sexual fantasies, preferences, or history, personal questions about social or sexual life, sexual comments about a person's clothing, anatomy, or looks, kissing sounds, howling, and smacking lips, telling lies or spreading rumors about a person's personal sex life, a neck massage, touching an employee's clothing, hair, or body, giving personal gifts, hanging around a person, hugging, kissing, patting, or stroking, touching or rubbing oneself sexually around another person, standing close or brushing up against a person, looking a person up and down, aka elevator eyes, staring at someone, sexually suggestive signals, facial expressions, winking, throwing kisses, or licking lips, making sexual gestures with hands or through body movements. So, these are more examples. Referring to a girl... Wait, this is just a repeat. So, it can either be verbal, or non-verbal, or physical. Let's see, terminology. Sexual harassment is a behavior. It is defined as unwelcome behavior of a sexual nature. For example, a man whistles at a woman when she walks by, or a woman looks at a man up and down when he walks towards her. Subtle sexual harassment is a behavior but not a legal term. It is unwelcome behavior of a sexual nature that, if allowed to continue, could create a quid pro quo and or a hostile work environment for the recipient. So, again, there are cases of sexual harassment that are not technically illegal, but are still nonetheless unwelcome and could, if continuing over a long enough period of time, create a hostile work environment. And the key here is unwelcome comments of a sexual nature. You might also replace this unwelcome comments of a romantic nature, right? Like, you're so beautiful, I wanna go out with you, repeatedly asking somebody out, staring at them, you know? You might consider yourself like a lovelorn individual who just wants a relationship with another person. But your behavior can be unwelcome and unwanted to another person who has a different perspective and isn't into the interactions the same way you are and doesn't interpret them as such, right? Like, I feel like this is Can we please get this posted in the Discord? Absolutely. I'll post it right here for all y'all to look at as you'd like. I feel like this is not the same document that I originally linked, though. Let me find that. Maybe it is. Let's see. Oh, no. Yep, this is it. Here you go. Liza, I'm not going to be redeeming those until after we're done with this part of the stream. Good night, Token Shy. Or Toki Shy. Now, you might think, well, that's just the UN. Like, who would ever, like, have non-legal terms for what sexual harassment is? Who would ever talk about the term impact over intent, which is a term that comes up an awful lot when talking about sexual harassment? Talon of the Silverhawk, I have not been paying close attention to chat. What the fuck? Why are you talking about pedos in chat? Hey, Princess Fina. I am aware you have Princess in your name. So you might be saying, oh, well, you know, that's just a couple people, you know, saying things at the UN, that crazy left-wing UN. Well, here's the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania going over important definitions when we're talking about this, right? Consent, an affirmative decision to engage in mutually agreed upon sexual activity and is given by clear words or actions. Consent may not be inferred from silence, passivity, or lack of resistance alone. Furthermore, consent is to one form of sexual activity does not imply consent to other forms of sexual activity, and the existence of a current or previous dating, marital, or sexual relationship is not sufficient to constitute consent to an additional sexual activity. Assent shall not constitute consent if it is given by a person who, because of youth, disability, intoxication, or other condition, is unable to lawfully give his or her consent. Pretty good. I would say consent also includes certain sexual social activities. Sociosexual, if you will, right? Because we can also talk about impact and intent. The impact, the effect or consequences of an action, the impact of behavior of a sexual nature is more important than the person's intentions in determining sexual harassment. This seems to be something that a lot of people really struggle with. Hey, Parkside Twan. Intent, the purpose or intention of an action from the actor's point of view. A person's good intent is not relevant in determining whether behavior may be sexual harassment. A lot of people don't understand this, which is why I emphasized it twice, okay? Impact is more important than intent when it comes to sexual harassment. Now, here's another thing. What behaviors are considered sexual harassment? After all, that liberal left-wing UN did list a lot of behaviors there. What constitutes inappropriate conduct? Some workplace conduct is clearly sexual harassment. For example, unwanted kissing, touching of breasts or genitals, butt slapping, rape, other forms of sexual assault, requests for sexual favors, making sexually explicit comments, uninvited massages, sexually suggestive gestures, catcalling, ogling, or courting someone in a tight space. While overt forms of sexual harassment certainly still happen in the workplace, more subtle forms of harassment are on the rise. For example, any of the following actions can be sexual harassment if they happen often enough or are severe enough to make an employee uncomfortable, intimidated, or distracted enough to interfere with their work. Now, keep in mind, the source that I'm quoting from here is an organization of lawyers. It's a legal company. These are lawyers giving their definitions and talking about workplace sexual harassment. But I would also encourage you to understand that this isn't just inappropriate in the workplace, it's also inappropriate elsewhere. You know, you can still sexually harass somebody outside of work. So here is what constitutes subtle sexual harassment. Repeated compliments of an employee's appearance, commenting on the attractiveness of others in front of an employee, discussing one's sex life in front of an employee, asking an employee about his or her sex life, circulating nude photos or photos of women in bikinis or shirtless men in the workplace, making sexual jokes, sending sexually suggestive text messages or emails, leaving unwanted gifts of a sexual or romantic nature, spreading sexual rumors about an employee, repeated hugs, or other unwanted touching. So, again, none of these on their own would necessarily constitute sexual harassment. But if these things are happening repeatedly, I would add that sexual behavior towards a subordinate is harassment, whether unwanted or not. I mean, that's not accurate at all, human capital stock. The key between sexual harassment and not sexual harassment is consent. Like, yeah, no. Let's see. So here's an example, right? Elena is an executive assistant. Her boss, Aaron, frequently asks Elena to join him for dinner after work, so they can go over his agenda and other items. These conversations quickly turn personal when Aaron asks Elena about her dating history and sexual preferences. During the workday, Elena catches Aaron staring at her for long periods of time while she works. Aaron sends Elena late-night texts saying he liked what she wore to work that day, or that he can't stop thinking about her. Aaron also makes a habit of stopping by Elena's office after everyone else has left for the day to complain about his non-existent sex life with his wife. Elena makes it clear that Aaron's conduct is not appropriate and tries to leave, but he stands in front of the doorway, saying that he just needs someone to be nice to him. Aaron's unwanted attention and sexual conduct continue to escalate over the course of several months. This would be sexual harassment. In fact, cornering somebody in their office and talking about your sex life, sexual harassment. Using, wait, I guess human capital stock, I guess that means everybody who is in any kind of position of power is just raping everybody that they have sex with, which I don't think that, I don't think that's accurate. Okay, yeah, obviously, when I'm talking about consent, I'm talking about adults. I didn't feel like I had to really clarify that, but I guess I do. Yes, you can't consent if you're a child. God damn. When I was working as a bartender, I was stocking the bar with a woman shift leader, and her shirt buttons had come open due to lifting things, which exposed her chest. I pulled her aside and told her about it, trying to be helpful to prevent her from flashing the rest of the staff, and she reported me for sexual harassment. The key here is that even though it was not my intention to harass her, she took it that way, and therefore it was valid to report me. Oof. I'm sorry to hear that, error person. That sounds frustrating. There are little bugs got in my room, and it's frustrating. Little mosquitoes. Alex Roivas, obviously there are issues where we can get down into the nitty-gritty that change the dynamics of a situation, but all I'm trying to do with this talk is explain what sexual harassment is, because so many goddamn people on this platform have no idea. Obviously, we can get into the nitty-gritty on, like, different issues of, like, consent and where it's appropriate and where it's not. Obviously, I'm just trying to cover the basic bitch topic here. Yeah, human capital stock. Yeah, we talked about how capitalism creates uneven power dynamics. But I also think it's absolutely ridiculous to be arguing that everyone is getting raped in capitalism because there are power dynamics. Now, oddly enough, even the US military understands what sexual harassment is. Okay? Here's an article from 2013 about intent versus impact. Wowee. The act of sexual harassment may start as a simple comment, touching, staring, licking one's lips, or a picture on the wall. To the perpetrator, this display of behavior may or may not be sexually intended. However, the individual receiving the message may find it offensive. The impact far outweighs the intent. Like, that's what we're talking about. You can be the most benevolent dude in the world. You can be, not even the dude, the most benevolent person in the world, okay? But if you're not aware of the social dynamics you have with other people, you can be unintentionally sexually harassing others by not taking into consideration their consent, their position within the power dynamic, etc. Like, yeah, absolutely. What's a JQ? The Jewish question. But Jack said don't say capitalism. I fucking talked about capitalism already. Goddamn. Top Dolphin, thank you for the follow. Yeah, also, power imbalances don't mean you can't have relationships with other people. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it means that there would be an unethical relationship, like between, say, a therapist and a patient. But in a lot of cases, the power dynamic can be overcome in a healthy way by being aware that it exists and doing your best to even it out. Hey, Just Kyle, what's up? Yo, these people absolutely unhinged. Now, here's an interesting law blog that I came across, right? This is by a lawyer who specializes in employment law. All right? Let's see, all relationships have some sort of power dynamic. Not every power dynamic revokes one's ability to consent. Exactly, Top Dolphin. Thank you. It's not Loblaw's Loblog. No. So here is the piece. It is by James P. Tarquin, PA, Employment Law. All right. Is the existence of a sexual hostile work environment determined by the harasser's intent? Having represented sexual harassment victims for more than 2 decades, our Alachua County, Florida sexual harassment lawyers know that employers often defend sexual harassment cases by claiming that the sexually harassing behavior amounted to nothing more than praise or compliments. Having mischaracterized the nature of the conduct at issue, employers then maintain that well-intentioned compliments and praise do not constitute sexual harassment. However, courts have consistently determined that whether a harasser's conduct constitutes sexual harassment is not determined by the harasser's allegedly benign intent. Instead of focusing on the harasser's intent, court focuses on the discriminatory effect of the harasser's actions. In this article, our Gainesville, Florida sexual harassment attorneys explain how the decisions by the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York in Cruz versus the New York State Department of Corrections and Communications supervision case number 13 CV 1335 shows that the harasser's ostensibly benign intent is irrelevant to whether victim worked in a sexual hostile work environment. So even the people who appeal to like legal cases, the legality of different things, you need to understand that your intent does not matter when we're talking about sexual harassment. Intent does not play into the question of whether or not sexual harassment happened. And a lot of people are deeply uncomfortable with that reality because they don't want to reflect on some of their past awkward interactions with other people, their past cringe interactions with others that might have constituted sexual harassment. But guess what? The great thing is, it's okay if you sexually harassed someone. Like, it's not the end of the world. You're not gonna lose your career. It's gonna be okay. People fuck up and they do things that make other people uncomfortable all the time. The great news is you can learn and do better and be more aware of your social interactions with other people. You can do better. It's great news. Also, keep in mind that, like, even if, like, the worst case scenario happened, like, Bill Cosby had to rape, like, 50 women, and even he's currently out of prison and planning to do, like, comedy sets. So, like, yeah, you can get away with a lot in our society, is what I'm saying. So, yeah, just, actually reflect on your behavior and do better and don't rape women, okay? Adding nuance on Beyonce's internet? Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer Convertibles. If someone doesn't reciprocate, just be chill with it and, like, be happy that you have, like, a cool coworker or, like, a new friend or something. Like, just, you don't have to, like, overreact. You don't have to, like, spend weird amounts of attention on somebody. You can be better. What if you raped someone? Is harassing the rapist invalid? Jesus fucking Christ. Alright, so here we go. Oh, little bugs. I got a new window air conditioner, guys, and bugs are coming through like little cracks, and it's bothering the shit out of me. Sorry. Here we go. here is another article from attorneys at law in the United States. Oh, let's see here. Don't worry, everybody. We'll fix this. It happens every time I stream now, so I just expect it. That's okay. They aren't going to be able to, I'm just wondering, as I was raped. I mean, Sailor MGC, you're probably better off, like, reporting your rape to the police and trying to prosecute than just, like, harassing your rapist. I mean, I'm not, like, a lawyer or, like, really doing super hot on that issue, but, like, probably better off going to authorities rather than just harassing your rapist. Especially since, having already raped, it is definitely an open question whether or not you're putting yourself in danger. Alright, I'm going to disable alerts, and we're going to put on... By the way, if you guys want to tell Nazis to go fuck themselves, give me money. Apply filters. Let's see. Damn, we got a big chonky raid of bots tonight. 158, not too shabby. Pointless, thank you for the 100 biddies. I appreciate it. Did I see the Hate Raid rap song? Nah, I did not. Sassy Cat slaps. Thank you very much for your tiny biddies of love. Justice Demon, we're not redeeming those until after the sexual harassment segment for obvious reasons. Oh, Archangel, they're gonna be banned. They are currently being banned by the bot remover. Let's see. Oh, okay, here we go. I'll just remove these. There we go. There we go. Maru dear, thank you so much for subscribing. 2 months for me and Ray. Yay. Geronimus Prime, thank you for the 69 biddies. Your stipend from the Itty Bitty Titty Committee. Thank you so much. Y'all have 2 minutes to get a hype train started. If you're interested in that. Sir Wesley. Love to you too. Y'all got a minute and a half to get on this hype train, motherfuckers. All right. So, here is another piece. Oh, need to disable the alert. There we go. Nope, I didn't disable the alert. There we go. Alert disabled. So, this one comes from Pira Zina Cifeli Paris and Genetempo LLC, attorneys at law. Do intentions matter when you're being harassed at work? How much do someone's intentions matter when they're harassing you? When your harasser seems to generally enjoy the apparent goodwill or tolerance of everyone else in the office, it can be difficult to be the lone voice of dissent or the only person brave enough to speak up against the status quo. The reality is that your harasser's alleged intentions don't matter when it comes to whether or not you're being discriminated against or harassed. If it did, most cases of workplace discrimination or harassment would probably never proceed. Except for a few truly vile individuals, most harassers probably don't see themselves as the villain of the story. They may see you as someone who doesn't appreciate their obvious generosity, a person who can't take a joke, or someone who is terribly oversensitive. Alternatively, they may simply have a poor grasp of social cues and be utterly bewildered about why you find their conduct offensive or harassing. None of that matters. As a victim, you need to understand that your experience is legally more important than the harasser's intentions. It's the impact, not the intent, of his or her words or actions that has to be considered when a harasser is being held accountable. First off, Ashley, thank you for the 5 Tier 1 community subs. I really appreciate it. Thank you for getting this hype train on. I really appreciate the hype train. And thank you for being just an absolute legend. I really appreciate it. And we are almost at level 2, so all y'all get on this. Because I'm cute, and I need biddies to live. Rip sub-only mode. Oh, fuck the bots. We can turn off sub-only mode. Or someone gift Top Dolphin a sub. I know this isn't important, but your boy just popped 605 for 3 reps. Dude, call me Brad. Congratulations on breaking 605 pounds. That's ridiculous. Yo, Upright Lion, thank you for gifting Sassy Cat Slaps a sub. And thank you for gifting your first sub in the channel. I really appreciate it. You already have biddies. I need more biddies. I require biddies to live. Amanda Smash, thank you for the 245 biddies. I appreciate you, and thank you for being awesome. Fire Red Emblem, thank you for gifting a sub to Top Dolphin. What a legend. Jim L. 1975, thank you for the 100 biddies. Love you. Sorry you've been dealing with the jerks lately. Keep on keeping on. I'm doing my best, you know? Yo, Top Dolphin, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub. Wait, I was just gonna sub myself. It's true, I do need those tig-ol biddies. Amanda, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub and getting us to level 3. How many biddies can a girl need? All of the biddies. Yes. Maro dear, I require all of the biddies. Yeah, exact. JMM, great point. Also on the subject of sexual harassment, people mistake that just because somebody is doing stripping, sex work, or porn, that doesn't mean that you can sexually harass them. True! Just because somebody is a sex worker doesn't mean that that is just like open season to like touch their body. say, grabbing their breasts in public, or non-consensually continually asking them out, or asking them to blow you, or any of the sexual things that you might ask a sex worker to do, because they're a human fucking being and they deserve the same amount of respect as any other person who performs labor in our society. Yo, Amanda, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. What the hell? Thank you so much. Emily Dis, thank you so much for the follow. El Gordo 63, thank you for the 100 biddies. I need biddies and titties to operate. It's true. I also haven't told you tonight, I love your lipstick tonight. Thank you. As an autistic person, my ability to read social cues is shit, so I avoid dealing with people as much as possible. As my stupid mouth says, dumb, embarrassing things whenever I try and flirt. Well, that's the thing. I think a lot of people struggle with different aspects of this, right? But the solution isn't necessarily to, like, build yourself a walled castle and, like, never interact with a woman or never interact with a man or never interact with anybody. The solution is just learning and doing a little bit better, you know? And I think being more blunt with our language, you know, being upfront and honest about what you want and respecting when other people don't want that, you know? Like, that would be a much better society to live in, IMO. Not eye roll. Oh, sorry. It's so good. Yo, Hail Soybeck, you had a job interview today. I hope it went well. More mean brunettes, true. Can we finish level 5 for her? Oh, yo, you guys are at level 5. You guys have 3 minutes to do level 5. I haven't been diagnosed on the spectrum, but I fully do the same thing. Yeah. I'm gonna... Real quick, we're gonna switch into good for Gabby. Thank you for the tier 1 community gift sub. I really appreciate it. Here, let's listen to a good. Here we go. Exia Ross, your phone is wrong. You got 2.5 minutes to get to the end of level 5, baby. Cross-Crescent Creed, hello! My lovely, lovely Conure follower. Mara dear, I'll talk about OnlyFans afterwards, if someone reminds me. It's Big Band Big Blue! Minute and a half to get to the end of this hype train, people. Let's go! Explosion 85! You need a sub, my friend. Spooky, thank you for the 300 biddies! Hello, Altered Rin! You're coming in the last minute of a hype train! I believe in you, chat! Floaty Corn, thank you for the 400 biddies! 1 minute left, y'all. Amanda with the 200 biddies! Yo, thank you so much! Guys, only got like 20 seconds left. Fire Red Emblem with 1,000 biddies at the last second. You got a handful of seconds left to hit 100%. You're at 91% chat. One more sub. Several hundred more bits. Explosion! 85, taking us across the finish line. Thank you for subscribing. Amanda Smash, thank you for that 200 bits. Yo, we did it. Mission accomplished, y'all. Thank you so much. That was scary, not gonna lie. Yeah, you guys got it. You also can't trust the timer on these. You can't trust the timer on hype trains. It ends like 20 seconds early. Good work, everybody. Floaty Corn, you came in at the last minute. Mewtwo appeared. Thank you for resubscribing and for being part of the community for the past 2 months. You're such a little sweetie with your, like, Lumi emotes. Irked, hello! How are you, lovely? Hail Swipeback, thank you for the 100 biddies. Can't trust the hype train timer. What can you trust these days? Yo, thank you for the 100 unicorn penises. Floaty Corn, thank you. I spent time doing my makeup and cleaning today, and I think I did an okay job on my makeup. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to handle another hate raid that's coming in. We're gonna listen to the DuckTales theme while I deal with that. The salties are back, always. Yo, Altered Rin, tell us more about your HRT experience. Oh, Draco Wrath, the notifications are turned off. I'll look at the dono tool. Aw, heck Twitch and their non-response to the hate raids. I'm giving directly to this lovely streamer. Draco Wrath, thank you for the $5. I really appreciate it. Each and every one of them dollary dues. Let's see. All right, so we got another 66 bots this time? Weak sauce. Am I participating in the walk-off? I am. And, by the way, just want to say, I'll be on the Humanist Report. I'm going to be on their Dystopian Times show on September 8th, so mark that down in your calendars. It's going to be a real good time. Do they count as viewers? No, they don't count as viewers, unfortunately. Yeah, the Humanist Report DM'd me the other day and invited me on to do the show, and apparently it's going to be the season finale. I'm super excited about it. Jack is big time now? Not quite. We still got a ways to go. But we're going to be bigger than Hassan, alright? $3 million house, child's play. Look, when I get to be a big time socialist, I'm buying a $12 million house. And then funding a super PAC with $1 billion more dollars. Jack is grande, girl. True. Can we threaded humanist report? Don't threaten anybody. Don't do that. No, look. By the way, just as an aside, if I ever catch that you guys are harassing anybody in other communities or like doing shitty things like that, I will ban you from my community, okay? Like I don't want to have a community that does the insane shit that like Destiny's community does, okay? Like be like fucking human beings. And if you can't, like, behave yourself, you're gonna get kicked out of this community. I don't want a community that does that. I want a community that organizes and shows up for, like, you know, getting political shit done. I don't want one that's just, like, harassing women online. Let's see now. Need to refresh to see if we got all the bots. I think we did. Please don't measure yourself by Destiny. Oh, I'm not measuring myself, just the community. I don't want to, if I built a community like Destiny has built his community, I would want to fucking kill myself. All right, like, Jesus. All right. We need to do another purge of bots. Okay. Also, maybe I didn't phrase that the right way, but I would be deeply disappointed in all of you. And remove and block. Ah, JMM, you blessed summer child. I wish I didn't know who Destiny was. I mean, Alex Rivas, you can definitely go over to the Humanist Report and send peach knives. I don't think it's a big threat. Commie Brad, what do you mean? I'd never forget you. Oh, we can turn off sub-only mode. Yo, but look, I know it does suck that we're spending so much time having to deal with these hate raids, but I really appreciate all of you for sticking with me through like the lags, through the buffering, and through the weird hate raids that are claiming I have AIDS. Apparently. Demon Waifu Woo, hello, thank you for chatting for the first time. Why do they hate you so much? Probably because I said something that's true and I'm a woman on the internet. I too irked. I like their name as well. Imagine if Vosh and Jimmy Dore had a baby. That's Destiny. God. Exia Ross, that is the most cursed thing you've ever put into my chat. Wait, are they claiming Jack is a sex haver? I am a sex haver. Oh, wait, sorry. I misspoke. I'm a sex 2 haver. I've never had sex 1. I've only had sex 2. The sequel. Pretty based. Sex havers go get the gulag. True. I'm here to please. Sex 2, Electric Boogaloo, yeah. Look, they added, is Sex 2 butt stuff? Look, they added a lot of new features to Sex 2. I guess I probably signed an NDA, so I can't really talk about it that much, but let me just say it's pretty cool. I love the new flight feature. I love the fast travel is sometimes a little bit jarring, but yeah, I'm actually having sex right now. The sex occurs on the astral plane. But it has the 5G. Are there new settings in Sex 2? I mean, there's the accessibility is much improved. They have a lot of different. They have a new easy mode. The accessibility has really gone up. God. Enderman sex though. I want to sign up for easy mode. Yeah, right? Sex 1 was all get good. I just want easy mode. Is that so hard? You know, just cozy in front of a fireplace. Okay. Yeah, what you really don't want is to enter Sex 2's survival mode, okay? That gets real dicey real fast. Survival mode would not recommend. What about Nos? Stove to the face. Demon Waifu Woo, you've only been in chat for like 10 minutes, but you're so adorable. I love you. They developed a new Sex 3.0 update on the new engine. Process billions of Kumexels at once. It's me, Natalie Marie. Thank you for gifting Demon Wife a subby. Hard mode is a different thing in Sex 2. True. True. When will there be Sex 2 time trials? Life is so hard sometimes, but gosh dang it, do you guys make it better. Ray Dundaddy, hello! Fuck. Right after the endurance mode? Fuck, you guys are funny. The dungeon runs in Sex 2 last over an hour. How deep are the dungeons? Depends on how deep you want to delve, you know? How's my evening? My evening's going great. Ugly Goomba 15, thank you for the follow. And don't call yourself ugly. I'm sure you're an upstanding individual with many fine qualities. Why you guys gotta badmouth my nos? We go from sexual harassment to Sex 2. What's going on? See, this is a perfect example, right? This is not a case of, like, violating consent, right? Like, I am respecting your consent by running with a joke that you all seem to like, right? And if you wanted to voice your disagreement, looks like we have another hot bot raid. We'll just deal with that, shall we? Remember, you can always say go fuck yourselves to the bot raiders by giving me money. Wait, you could fly a plane off that massive chin? What? Have you guys never seen a chin before? Have you guys never seen a chin before? This is like the normalest part of my face. There are so many other things you could make fun of about my face. You picked like the most normal one. Aw, Exia, thank you. Sarah Scorpion, thank you too. I love Jack's chin, helps complement her cheekbones. Ah. Oh, here we go. We might actually have a decent number of bots this time. Also, Floaty Corn, thank you for the 13 biddies. Now this is a chin. You call this a chin? Now this is a chin. I don't know. My Australian accent is very bad. Your headphones clash with your hair color. High fives all the guys in the locker room. High five and a million angels. Let's see. We'll go back 5 minutes. A couple more minutes. Apply filter. Make sure we don't accidentally ban Demon Waifu Woo. Now, Ugly Goomba, you might be... Ugly Goomba 15, if I accidentally ban you, just send in an on-ban request. Now, this time we had 214 bots. Not too shabby, guys. One day, we'll get back to talking about sexual harassment. Look, you guys can say Coomer things to me. I don't mind. It's part of my appeal. I understand. It's okay. I don't know why I'm doing weird arm gestures today. Floaty Corn, thank you for the 114 bits. We can coom, just, yeah, exactly, Entrama. As long as it's respectful cooming. Respectful cooming. My dysphoria is crushing me. I feel so goddamn awful. Every mood that could be crushing me right now is my bipolar, schizophrenia, dysphoria, all acting up at once, making me feel like an utter piece of shit, utterly undeserving of life. I might need to go soon. I don't know. Well, Moro, just know that we all love you and appreciate you, and you literally brighten like all of our days when you show up in chat. At the very least, I speak for myself when I say that, but you're cool and I like you, and I think a lot of other people like you too. It must be a respectful nut, true. Altered Rin, I'm sorry. I'm probably also not gonna get a lot of sleep tonight. Isn't someone owed an "Oh Daddy"? Yes, but we haven't finished our sexual harassment segment yet, which is the reason I haven't done the "Oh Daddy" or the "Oh Mommy" yet. Aw, Aspen6, you don't have a sub. I'm sorry. Somebody gift you a sub, please. Also, there we go. All right. Let's finish our discussion about sexual harassment. We're almost done. We're almost done. Now, again, I really want to emphasize this point. Mary Spinster. And thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub to Aspen6. Give his damn daddy. All right. Daddy. Oh, mommy. Oh. All right. So, to emphasize this again, right? Nope, we're still here. For the my dropped any frames throughout all of this. So the buffering isn't on my end, guys. Like it's literally smutter on my end. It's something on Wait, you guys missed it? Oh no. Oh, mommy. Daddy. Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. It might have something the massive numbers of bot accounts being created on the directed towards certain streamers like myself. I would hazard a guess that bots following all at once probably do backend that kind of fucks up the streams. Yes. So, oh yeah, I miss mommy. Can you do it again? Nah. El Gordo, it's Twitch. It's not me. So I'm gonna emphasize this again, guys. Except truly vile individuals, most harassers don't see themselves as the villain in the story. They may see you as someone who doesn't appreciate their obvious generosity, a person who can't take a joke, somebody who's terribly oversensitive. Alternative, they may simply have a poor grasp of social cues and be utterly bewildered about why you're offensive or harassing. Your intent behind your actions doesn't matter as much as the impact on an individual who feels that they have been sexually harassed and doesn't feel safe and feels like there might be professional repercussions. No Theo, hello. Wait, not the no. There we go. Welcome. Hey, Chaotic Kitten. So when we're talking about sexual harassment, I need to emphasize that this quote that I just read comes directly from lawyers who specialize in workplace discrimination and also just discrimination in general. Because that's part of what makes sexual harassment bad. It is something that imposes a power dynamic upon somebody or imposes potential consequences that are enabled by a power differential that could negatively impact their life. Irked, thank you for gifting the Mary Spinster a sub. And that, Jack, is why I don't flirt. I'm terrified of accidentally harassing someone without meaning to. Well, Talon, I think that the solution is not to build walls around ourselves, but to instead teach ourselves to be more aware of others, you know? And like I was saying earlier, being blunter with our language, being blunt about what we want and what we would like, I think that's something that saves us so much pain and so much difficulty, right? It's the dancing around the issue. It's the not getting a solid no or a solid yes that prevents us from, like, respecting each other. Like, a lot of people just kind of hope that, like, you know, by being kind of roundabout in a way of saying no, that signal gets picked up, or in a roundabout way of, like, trying to signal yes, that signal gets picked up. And a lot of people don't pick up on signals very well, you know? Like, we need to be blunt about what we want, and, like, I think the world would be much easier to navigate. We back? We never were gone, baby. Now, one of the issues when we do talk about sexual harassment is the lack of a common definition. For example, when we've been talking here about, like, state laws or federal laws about sexual harassment, those differ from, like, an overarching definition, right? So, like, organizations that are international, like the UN, have a broader definition of what is and is not sexual harassment than, say, like, the legal system of the United States or the legal system of Canada or the EU or something like that, you know? This lack of a common definition makes it difficult for a lot of people to understand what exactly it is, right? Which is why I'm trying to make it clear that sexual harassment is, generally speaking, a disregard for the consent of somebody else, and it is birthed by a power differential, and the impact of the sexual harassment is much more material than the intent behind the sexual harassment. And these are a couple concepts that we really need to keep in mind, because I think they'll save us all a lot of grief later on. I was terrible at flirting signals. I was always too much in my head. Yeah, like, stove to the face. I was always one of those people who's, like, trying to, like, well, like read the tea leaves, you know, like, well, she said this, so she obviously meant this, and or he said that, but he looked a certain way, and so, like, you know, he really has this issue and this issue, or like really didn't like this or X or Y or Z. It's much easier if you just, like, ask somebody than pretending you know someone better than they know themselves, you know? For many people that are worried about flirting, you can always try pretty harmless compliments that aren't directly about a person's body, like, those glasses are super cute, and then how they reply about it can help you figure out what they're interested in being told. Yeah, stuff like that. More people would have to deal with rejection better for you to otherwise lovely plan to work. That is another thing, Zero Sen. I like, the bluntness is kind of contingent on everyone being able to say no, you know? because one of the key issues in sexual harassment is that sometimes people who fear speaking up fear for their professional or physical safety, right? Like if you put a foot down, like that could negatively impact your career, or it could escalate a situation to make it physically dangerous. And that's a really good point, and I'm glad that you brought it up. It is something that requires a shift in our overall, I guess, sexual dynamics, right? Like, we would have to be able to, on some level, overcome the patriarchy to achieve wider acceptance of bluntness. How much of these issues do you think stem from parents not wanting to talk about anything sexual with their kids? Honestly, Exia Ross, I think it's a lot. I think a lot of it is. I think we need to have comprehensive sexual education in schools, and that means introducing the idea of consent early on, and then we can raise a generation of kids that respects the consent of other people, or is growing up in a cultural and social position that emphasizes respecting other people's consent and taking that into account, not just in like a sexual way, but also just when it comes to like platonic hugs or the consent that's necessary to have conversations that are productive, stuff like that. Consent is a wider idea than just, do you want to have sex with me? And I think that is a concept that we need to introduce extremely early in schools, because we know that by introducing this concept early on in schools, we make kids safer by allowing them to be able to clearly set their own boundaries. We reduce the likelihood that they will be victims of sexual assault or rape or abuse by teaching consent. And so I think that this is something that if we just went along and did that, that's something that in and of itself could improve the situations of people when those kids grow up in the workplace. But I mean, obviously I'm saying that without hard studies behind it, but I don't think that's unreasonable, that introducing the idea of consent and emphasizing its importance early on, which demonstrably does have extremely good benefits if you don't want children raped, would later on, when those kids become adults, help them navigate social situations and show more respect and compassion towards other people. Yeah, respect? I know, right? R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Find out what it means to me. Irked, I adore you. You're so cute. I'm sorry, Moro. This is the type of conversation I meant in the message the other day. Thank you. Yeah, I have been upset about the coverage of, and I haven't mentioned it specifically, but I've been really upset and disappointed by the wider coverage of the Prime Kai and Kat situation, largely because it was a great opportunity to talk about what sexual harassment is, and as a community come together and find a better way to interact with each other, a more healthy way to interact with one another. And instead people took it as something to debate on. And that's not how this works. And that's really frustrating to me. And to clarify, I believe Prime. I don't think that he's a malicious or bad person. But what we have to understand is that it is impact over intent. And so I'm not mad at Prime. I don't want Prime to lose his career. And that's something that I've said since last week repeatedly on social media, on the panel, and today. But what I do want is an acknowledgement that good people can make mistakes and sexually harass somebody. And that that's not the end of the world. And that we can acknowledge those mistakes and grow together by having a conversation about it. And, you know, it's also something we can talk about the degree to which this is severe. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, we have less severe instances of sexual harassment all the time, just like in public, like when you go to like a corner market, like a bodega, and somebody catcalls you from a nearby construction site. That's sexual harassment, right? But like, generally speaking, if you ask that catcaller, they don't mean it as like something that they want to like intimidate you or like violate your consent or whatever. They just see a pretty lady and they want to say something to maybe get like a date or something. Like, it's not healthy behavior, and if we can have a conversation about it like adults, it's something that we can as a community address. And I just think there are a lot of people who don't necessarily want to have that conversation because it makes them uncomfortable. This isn't a witch hunt situation, and the fact that it has been made into one with claims that people are like conspiratorially making up death threats or whatever is insane to me. Absolutely insane. And it shows just how necessary having conversations like this one is, because so many people don't get it. Someone on Twitter directly said to me that 99% of sexual harassment cases depend on the intent of the harasser, and that's just not true. That's just not true. And call me Brad, I know. I'm using a stereotype. I should find a better one. But this is a case where like better conversations are out there to be had, and dunking on one another for like political points was never and should never have been the focus of this. And that's what it immediately became. And that's very frustrating to me. Thanks for sharing your thoughts about why you chose the stream topic for today, because I'm toying with the idea of streaming and I'd like to chat with people about lefty things, but I really dislike the debate bro culture. Well, and that's the other thing, Conoclast. There are some things that are like that make for great blood sports, you know? In debates. I personally love seeing like a neo-Nazi get clubbed over the head by a lefty. You know, that's fun for me. I like that. What is and is not sexual harassment? Not so fun for me. Mostly because I've been sexually harassed. Literally every woman I know has been sexually harassed. And turning an instance of sexual harassment where someone felt like they were harassed into a debate bro topic is not something to me that is cool or valuable or entertaining. In fact, it makes me quite upset and mad. So, yeah, that is why I brought up this topic for today, right? And, hey, we can even look at, like, the U.S. Department of the Interior, right? Examples of sexual harassment: physical contact, squeezing a coworker's shoulders or putting a hand around his or her waist. Gestures such as puckering one's lips suggestively or making obscene signs with one's fingers or hands. Telling off-color jokes. Pictures of a sexual nature. Pin-ups, particularly those of scantily clad individuals. Verbal or written comments of a sexual nature. Terms of endearment, such as calling a coworker honey, dear, sweetheart, or some similar expression. The effect is the primary issue rather than intent. Even if the person means nothing to you, or you have used the term for years, you should be aware that such expressions are inappropriate. Because again, almost every document that I could find while looking up sexual harassment lists impact over intent. And the fact that so many people don't seem to understand that tells me that there is an underlying problem of people fundamentally not understanding what sexual harassment is. And I think that that fundamentally contributes to a culture where it continues to happen. I grew up in a time where everything was up for debate. I feel like a dinosaur now. Well, sure. But, like, if you're gonna have a debate about, like, the issue of sexual harassment. Don't have a debate about whether what someone else experienced was sexual harassment or not. Because that is definitionally not something other people get to decide. Other people don't get to decide if you were sexually harassed or not. Like, when the impact is real, that impact is decided by the person who was on the receiving end of the sexual harassment. Now, whether or not laws got broken, that's something for other people to decide. But that's not something that anyone was claiming at any point in any of this particular circumstance. For me, I would love to do political streaming, but besides time and money, the one thing that I hate is goalposts movers, mainly anti-vaxxers. I don't like the mRNA. Then, I don't like the mRNA. Then take J&J. Well, it's not FDA approved. Okay, take Pfizer. Then, etc. Just fucking honest with your opinions. Yeah, Parkside Twan, that is something that is very irritating, you know? It's like a car accident. You may not have meant to hit me, but I can still be seriously injured. True. See, when I hear stuff like that, it makes me want to proceed Socratically. It's what I was formerly trained in, and I'm suddenly a counter-revolutionary when I ask why. Well, because sexual harassment is definitionally defined by the experience of the person who is harassed. Now, if you want to come up with a different term for what somebody experienced, I guess that's, like, okay. But then we're talking about something completely different, and I don't think it is appropriate to debate whether or not what somebody in your own professional space experienced was sexual harassment or not, when you aren't the one who experienced it. Like, it's fine to ask why. I'm open to having conversations about it, but, like, diving into somebody's DMs to prove that they were not sexually harassed when they aren't even, like, bringing it to, like, a court of law, like, that to me is, like, real cringy, real over the line, and real witch hunt like stuff, and it's not gonna help. Asking questions from a place of ignorance can come off very bad quite easily. Denialists pull that off all the time. True. So, with that, we're going to finish this segment with a short video by the guy we watched at the beginning of this segment, titled Violence Against Women, It's a Men's Issue. This is from 2013, so we're going back quite a ways. Yeah, exactly, Commie Brad. Having a discussion about the concepts is great and exactly what I want. Talking about whether or not what somebody's subjective experience was is accurate or is their actual experience, that's not something I'm down for. Creating a witch hunt out of that, nah, not my jam. Socrates is dead. What a chump. Why are you still using his methods?
Before I begin my presentation, I want to say it's a great honor for me to be part of a program with so many impressive women. I also want to say, and thank you to the organizers to invite me to be part of this. It's important that I say, and that men say...
If Socrates' ideas were so good, why isn't he still alive? What a loser.
When we do the work that we do, and especially in the field of gender violence prevention that I'm going to talk with you about this morning, it's important that we acknowledge that the growing movement of men in the United States, in a multicultural sense, and all around the world in an international sense, the growing movement of men who are standing up and speaking...
I feel like the Greeks killed Socrates for being annoying, so... Yeah, if Socrates is so good, where's Socrates too?
out about men's violence against women and going into parts of male culture that have historically been either apathetic about or openly hostile to women's efforts to engage them. That movement of men is indebted to the leadership of women on a personal level, on a professional level, on a political level, on an intellectual level, on every level. Women built these movements, and these are movements that are affecting, in a positive way, everybody, not just women and girls, but also men and boys. And oftentimes men like myself get a lot of credit and public acclaim for doing the work that women have been doing for a long time. So one of the ways that we can use the spotlight is to thank women and honor women's leadership going forward today, tomorrow, and into the future. Now, having said that, I'm going to share with you a paradigm-shifting perspective on the issues of gender violence, sexual assault, domestic violence, relationship abuse, sexual harassment, sexual abuse of children, that whole range of issues that I'll refer to in shorthand as gender violence issues. They've been seen as women's issues that some good men help out with. But I have a problem with that frame, and I don't accept it. I don't see these as women's issues that some good men help out with. In fact, I'm going to argue that these are men's issues, first and foremost. Now, obviously, they're also women's issues, so I appreciate that. But calling gender violence a women's issue is part of the problem for a number of reasons. The first is that it gives men an excuse not to pay attention. Right? A lot of men hear the term women's issues and we tend to tune it out and we think, hey, I'm a guy, that's for the girls or that's for the women. And a lot of men literally don't get beyond the first sentence as a result. It's almost like a chip in our brain is activated and the neural pathways take our attention in a different direction when we hear the term women's issues. This is also true, by the way, of the word gender, because a lot of people hear the word gender and they think it means women. So they think that gender issues is synonymous with women's issues. There's some confusion about the term gender. And actually,
he's right, though. He's right. A lot of men don't think of women's issues as things that relate to them at all. But we live in an interconnected world, and women's issues can, in a lot of cases, become men's issues. Right? Like, sexual harassment can sometimes be turned around against men. Sexual abuse can be turned around against men. This happens a lot. And so I do like him starting off this conversation by making it clear that we should probably not gender this issue quite as much as we tend to.
Let me illustrate that confusion by way of analogy. So let's talk for a moment about race.
Or I guess if we are going to gender the issue, know your audience and gender it towards your audience.
U.S., when we hear the word race, a lot of people think that means African American, Latino, Asian American, Native American, South Asian, Pacific Islander, on and on. A lot of people, when they hear the word sexual orientation, think it means gay, lesbian, bisexual. And a lot of people, when they hear the word gender, think it means women. In each case, the dominant group doesn't get paid attention to, right? As if white people don't have some sort of racial identity or belong to some racial category.
True, Jabek, but a lot of men don't think of it as their issue. But I know what you mean.
Or construct. As if heterosexual people don't have a sexual orientation. As if men don't have a gender. This is one of the ways that dominant systems maintain and reproduce themselves, which is to say the dominant group is rarely challenged to even think about its dominance, because that's one of the key characteristics of power and privilege, the ability to go unexamined, lacking introspection, and in fact being rendered invisible in large measure in the discourse about issues that are primarily about us. And this is amazing how this works in domestic and sexual violence, how men have been largely erased from so much of the conversation about a subject that is centrally about.
Have experienced sexism and discrimination as the only guy on a board with 7 to 8 women. It's a lot easier to relate to and sympathize with when you've experienced it yourself. First off, Mara dear, I'm really sorry that you did experience that. And second off, yeah, absolutely. There are, for example, a lot of men who experience rape suddenly become much more interested in issues regarding sexual assault. This is a phenomenon that happens, and I wish that wasn't the case. I wish we could just get more people on board without them having to go through horrific experience.
About men. And I'm going to illustrate what I'm talking about by using the old tech. I'm old school on some fundamental regard. I make films and I work with, high tech, but I'm still old school as an educator. And I want to share with you this exercise that illustrates on the structure level how the way that we think, literally use language, conspires to keep our attention off of men. It's about domestic violence in particular, but you can plug in other analogs. This comes from the work of the feminist linguist Julie.
By the way, this topic that he's bringing up, the use of language to kind of shape conversations, also something that we need to be aware of, because fascists are interested in shaping languages that are amenable to fascism, to language, so that we can't actively argue against the fascist state. So this is something to just keep in mind, because it is connected with a lot of the other talk about here on this channel, right? One of the of fascism specifically calls out of shaping language, and I find it very interesting. Just how I English, so obviously I'm a bit biased, but I find it language so subtly impacts how we think.
With a very basic English sentence. John beat Mary. John is the subject, beat is the verb, Mary is the object. Good sentence. Now we're going to move to the second sentence in the passive voice. Mary was beaten, and now a whole lot has happened in one sentence. We've gone from John to Mary was beaten by John. We've shifted our focus in one sentence from John to Mary. And you can see John is very close to dropping off the map of our psychic plane. The third sentence, John is dropped. Mary was beaten, and now it's Mary. We're not even thinking about John. It's totally focused on Mary. Over the past generation, the term we've used synonymous with beaten is battered. So Mary was battered. And the final sentence in this sequence, flowing from the other, Mary is a battered woman. So now Mary's very identity, Mary is a battered, is what was done to her by John in the first instance. But we've demonstrated that John has long ago left the conversation. Work in domestic and sexual violence field know that victim blaming is pervasive in this realm, which is to say blaming the person to whom something was done rather than did it. And we say things like, why do these women go out with these men? Why do they keep going back? What was she wearing at that party? What a stupid thing to do. Why was she drinking with that group of guys in that hotel room? And there are numerous reasons for it, but one of them is that our whole cognitive structure is set up to blame victims. This is all unconscious. Our whole cognitive structure is set up to ask questions about women's choices and what they're doing, thinking, and wearing. And I'm not going to shout down people who ask questions about women. It's a legitimate thing to ask. But let's be clear, asking questions about Mary is not going to get there in terms of preventing violence. We have to ask a different set of questions. And you can see with this, right? The questions are not about John. The questions include things like why is domestic violence still a big problem in the United States and all over the world? What's going on? Men abused physically, emotionally, and other verbally, and the women and girls and the men and boys that they claim to love.
Yeah, he is using extremely effective rhetoric. Effective. This is I am really loving. Yeah, we need to be willing to have these conversations and to talk about the underlying why these things keep happening, because we all agree that sexual harassment is bad. We all seem to agree on these numerous topics. In fact, I feel like if we asked rapists they think rape is bad, they would say yes. And it is confusing why it keeps happening, isn't it? It's because a lot of people don't, at the end of the day, view themselves as part of a wider problem that creates these problems.
What's going on with men? Why does sexually abuse little girls and little boys? Why is that a common problem in our society and the world today? Why? Why do we hear over and over new scandals erupting in major institutions like church or the Penn State football program or the America, on and on and on, and then local communities all over the country and all the world, right? We hear about it all the time. Sexual abuse of children. What's going on with men? Why do so many men rape women in our society and around the world? Why do so many men rape others? What is going on with men? And then what is the role of the various institutions in our society use of men at pandemic rates? Because this isn't about individual perpetrators. That's a naive way to understanding what is a much deeper social problem. You know, the perpetrators aren't these, monsters who crawl out of the swamp and come into town business and then retreat into the darkness.
They aren't dragging slain. This is what I have repeatedly, since this conversation started, easy solutions to these issues. It's monsters. They want the weak that they can take care of and then wipe their hands of, deal with again. But life isn't that simple. Life just instead, people are human beings. Harassment are human beings, people who do sexual abuse human beings, and we need to understand the system that we live in that is producing people. So 77 Sage, thank you for the hydrate and the posture check and the stretch. Yeah, sorry y'all, it's Twitch. Yeah, your sub ran out. My condolences. Maybe someone will be.
That's a very naive notion, right? Perpetrators are much more normal than that. So the question is, what are we doing here in our society and in the world? What are the institutions in helping to produce abusive men? What's the role of religious belief, the sports culture, the pornography culture, the economics and how that intersects, and race and ethnicity and how that intersects? How does all this work? Once we start making those kind of connections and asking those important and then we can talk about how can we be transformed, we do something differently. How can we change the practices? How can we change the socialization of definitions of manhood that lead to these current outcomes? These are the kind of questions that we need to be asking, work that we need to be doing, but if we're endlessly focused on women are doing and thinking in relationships, or else we get to that piece.
And we're also not going to get to that piece if we're constantly bogged down, dragging through DMs and going on witch hunts and talking about individual cases. There is some value to that, using them as a platform to conversation. But if we're not having that wider conversation and we're like each of these issues is one off and not largely symptomatic of something better to deal with and that we are less comfortable with dealing with, that stable underlying condition that we're all afflicted, you know, this unknown, we about it. And we don't where by focusing on a single piece of known information or a single known, we don't get anywhere by talking about Mary as if some harlot who set herself up for all of the things that happened to her. We don't focusing on John as a monster who spontaneously appeared, dragon that just crawled out of the depths of the earth. We don't get anywhere if we talk about things like that. So we have to talk about things larger than that. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable, I think.
Now, I understand that a lot of women who have been trying to speak out about these issues today and for years and years often get shouted down for their called nasty names like male man-hater and the disgusting and offensive feminazi. You know what all this is about? It's called kill the messenger. Who are standing up and speaking out for themselves and for other women, as well as for men and boys. It's to sit down and shut up. Keep the current system in place because we don't like it when people challenge our power. You better sit down and shut up, basically. And thank that women haven't done that. Thank goodness.
Welcome. Also, Spectacular Snyderman, thank you for gifting it to Exia Ross.
World where there's so much women's leadership that can't that. But one of the powerful roles that men can play in this work is that we can that sometimes women can't say, or better yet, we can be heard saying some things that women often can't be heard saying. That's a problem, it's sexism, but it's the truth. And so one of the things that I say to men, and my colleagues and I say this, is we need more men who have the courage to start standing up and saying some of this stuff. Women, not against them, pretending that somehow this is a battle between the sexes and other kinds of nonsense. And by the way, one of the things that really bothers me about some of the rhetoric that against feminists who have built the battered women and around the world is that somehow, like I said, that they're anti-male. What about all the only affected on a negative way by what some adult man is doing against their mother, themselves, what about all those boys and boys who have been traumatized by adult men's violence? You know what? The same system that produces men who abuse other men. And if we want to talk about male victims, most male victims of violence are the victims of other men's violence. So that's something men have in common. We are both victims of men's violence. So we have it in our direct self-interest, not to mention the fact that most...
Always talking about that black-on-black crime, but they never talk about the men-on-men crime.
Men that I know have women and girls that we care deeply about in our families, in our friendship circles, and every other way. So there's so many reasons why we need men to speak out.
Here you go.
It seems obvious saying it out loud, doesn't it? Now, the nature of the work that I do and my colleagues do in the sports culture, in the US military, in schools, we pioneered this approach called the bystander approach to gender violence prevention. And I just want to give you the highlights of the bystander approach because it's a big sort of thematic shift, although there's lots of particulars. But the heart of it is, instead of seeing men as perpetrators, women as victims, or women as perpetrators, men as victims, or any combination in there. I'm using the gender binary. I know there's more than men and women. There's more than male and female. And there are...
Yo, this guy is cool as shit. Like, just repeatedly. So based. Sidewalk connoisseur, why are you crying? Don't be sad.
Women who are perpetrators, and of course there are men who are victims. You know, there's a whole spectrum. But instead of seeing it in the binary fashion, we focus on all of us as what we call bystanders. And a bystander is defined as anybody who is not a perpetrator or a victim in a given situation. So in other words, friends, teammates, colleagues, co-workers, family members, those of us who are not directly involved in a dyad of abuse, but we are embedded in social, family, work, school, and other peer culture relationships with people who might be in that situation. What do we do? How do we speak up? How do we challenge our friends? How do we support our friends? But how do we not remain silent in the face of abuse? Now, when it comes to men and male culture, the goal is to get men who are not abusive to challenge men who are. And when I say abusive, I don't mean just men who are beating women. We're not just saying that a man whose friend is abusing his girlfriend needs to stop the guy at the moment of attack. I mean, that's a naive way of creating a social change. It's along a continuum we're trying to get men to interrupt each other. So for example, if you're a guy and you're in a group of guys playing poker, talking, hanging out, no women present, and another guy says something sexist or degrading or harassing about women, instead of laughing along or pretending you didn't hear it, we need men to say, hey, that's not funny. That could be my sister you're talking about, and could you joke about something else? Or could you talk about something else? I don't appreciate that kind of talk. Just like if you're a white person and another white person makes a racist comment, I hope, that white people would interrupt that racist enactment by a fellow white person. Just like with heterosexism, if you're a heterosexual person and you yourself don't enact harassing or abusive behaviors towards people of varying sexual orientations, if you don't say something in the face of other heterosexual people doing that, then in a sense, isn't your silence a form of consent and complicity? Well, the bystander approach is trying to give people tools to interrupt that process and to speak up and to create a peer culture climate where the abusive behavior will be seen as unacceptable, not just because it's illegal, but because it's wrong and unacceptable in the peer culture. And if we can get to the place where men who act out in sexist ways will lose status, young men and boys who act out in sexist and harassing ways towards girls and women, as well as towards other boys and men, will lose status as a result of it, guess what? We'll see a radical diminution of the abuse, because the typical perpetrator is not sick and twisted. He's a normal guy in every other way, isn't he? Now, among the many great things that Martin Luther King said in his short life was, in the end, what'll hurt the most is not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. In the end, what'll hurt the most is not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. There's been an awful lot of silence in male culture about this ongoing tragedy of men's violence against women and children, hasn't there? There's been an awful lot of silence. And all I'm saying is that we need to break that silence, and we need more men to do that. Now, it's easier said than done, because I'm saying it now, but I'm telling you, it's not easy in male culture for guys to challenge each other, which is one of the reasons why part of the paradigm shift that has to happen is not just understanding these issues as men's issues, but they're also leadership issues for men. Because ultimately, the responsibility for taking a stand on these issues should not fall on the shoulder of little boys or teenage boys in high school or college men. It should be on adult men with power. Adult men with power are the ones we need to be holding accountable for being leaders on these issues. Because when somebody speaks up in a peer culture and challenges and interrupts, he or she is being a leader, really, right? But on a big scale, we need more adult men with power to start prioritizing these issues. And we haven't seen that yet, have we? Now, I was at a dinner a number of years ago, and I work extensively with the US military, all the services. And I was at this dinner, and this woman said to me, I think she thought she was a little clever, she said, so how long have you been doing sensitivity training with the Marines? And I said, with all due respect, I don't do sensitivity training with the Marines. I run a leadership program in the Marine Corps. Now, I know it's a bit pompous, my response, but it's an important distinction, because I don't believe that what we need is sensitivity training. We need leadership training. Because, for example, when a professional coach or manager of a baseball team or football team, and I work extensively in that realm as well, makes a sexist comment, makes a homophobic statement, makes a racist comment, there'll be discussions on the sports blogs and in sports talk radio, and some people will say, well, he needs sensitivity training, and other people will say, well, get off it, that's political correctness run amok, and he made a stupid statement, move on. My argument is he doesn't need sensitivity training, he needs leadership training, because he's being a bad leader. Because in a society with gender diversity and sexual diversity and racial and ethnic diversity, you make those kind of comments, you're failing at your leadership. If we can make this point that I'm making to powerful men and women in our society at all levels of institutional authority and power, it's going to change. It's going to change the paradigm of people's thinking. For example, I work in...
Now, I'm gonna pause this real quick, because he is right, guys. He is right that ideas by powerful, influential figures can affect people underneath them in a rigidly hierarchical society. Now, granted, I agree also that the underlying issue does largely come from power differentials, and that we need to address those power differentials. I said that earlier, right? But this fundamental issue here of, I think he's phrasing it in a way that can effectively address the issue in our society as it stands today. I think even more effectively than the earlier speaker we watched, right? This guy is, I think, very effectively translating this message in a way that resonates with men. Because men don't want sensitivity training. And you know, we kind of joke like, oh, they're going to have makeup for men or whatever. It's going to be called like war paint or whatever. But like, yeah, the way you present something does matter. Powerful and influential people like Riverboat Jack, Slime and Beans. People don't change. People do change. That's one of the great things about people. And so I don't know. I think that this is really great. I don't think it gets at the underlying issue of power differentials, but I do think that it is a method that can effectively like communicate to men who have grown up within the patriarchy, because it meets them on their own terms. It meets the patriarchy on the patriarchy's terms, but introduces ideas that fundamentally cannot coexist with patriarchy. But it presents them in a way that cannot be like easily ignored by men. And I think that that's something that's really interesting about the like his rhetoric here that makes it very effective.
A lot in college and university athletics throughout North America, right? We know so much about how to prevent domestic and sexual violence, right? There's no excuse for a college or university to not have domestic and sexual violence prevention training mandated for all student athletes, coaches, and administrators as part of their educational process. We know enough to know that we can easily do that, but you know what's missing? The leadership. But it's not the leadership of student athletes. It's the leadership of the athletic director, the president of the university, the people in charge who make decisions about resources and who make decisions about priorities in the institutional settings, right? That's a failure in most cases of men's leadership. Look at Penn.
I would say that a lot of this issue would be, at the very least, diminished by more justified hierarchy via mechanisms of democracy, but in the world we live in, like we're not going to get that right now without like a huge mobilizing push for it, which, you know, hopefully you all can join me in. But yeah.
Penn State is the mother of all teachable moments for the bystander approach. You had so many situations in that realm where men in powerful positions failed to act to protect children, in this case, boys. It's unbelievable, really. But when you get into it, you realize there are pressures on men. There are constraints within peer cultures on men, which is why we need to encourage men to break through those pressures. And one of the ways to do that is to say there's an awful lot of men who care deeply about these issues. I know this. I work with men, and I've been working with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of men for many, many decades now. It's scary when you think about it, how many years. But there's so many men who care deeply about these issues, but caring deeply is not enough. We need more men with the guts, with the courage, with the strength, with the moral integrity to break our complicit silence and challenge each other and stand with women, not against them. By the way, we owe it to women, there's no question about it, but we also owe it to our sons. We also owe it to young men who are growing up all over the world in situations where they didn't make the choice to be a man in a culture that tells them that manhood is a certain way. They didn't make the choice. We that have a choice have an opportunity and a responsibility to them as well. I hope that going forward, men and women working together can begin the change and the transformation that'll happen so that future generations won't have the level of tragedy that we deal with on a daily basis. I know we can do it. We can do better. Thank you very much.
That was based as hell. Yeah, Kami Brad, you're one of the, like, You're one of the most masculine people I know, so if like this is resonating with you, I know he did a good job. Yeah, that was really good, right? Hey, I'm masculine, just ask me. Jim, are you masculine? My hair is being weird today. Good night, Mithril Mist. And I'm a potato that just spent 50 minutes crying? No, you're a lovely lady that just spent 50 minutes crying. Ask the mask. Self-certified? I believe you. Diphallospartus, I have absolutely no idea what the branding of, like, TED Talks. I don't know what their branding means anymore. Hey, Crescent Creed, glad you're comfy. Dysthron, I'm glad. Wow, honestly, Kami Brad, I'm surprised you haven't seen Baki. That seems like your shit. What is this?
Hey everybody.
No, we don't need to watch this. So, to kind of cap off this conversation, guys, you can sexually harass somebody without intending to. Does that make you a bad person? Not necessarily, but you should learn from the experience and do better. And we should be willing to engage with the idea that maybe a lot of us have done behavior or have acted in ways that have made other people uncomfortable, and that it is okay to recognize our own failings and to do better and to learn, and that we should, in the future, be more clear in our communication and respect the consent of other people involved, not just when it comes to sex, but also when it comes to conversations or flirting or just basic interactions with other people. We need to be more aware, and we need to respect others the same way we respect other people that are really important to us, you know? So that's my general point. And specifically on the Prime issue, yeah, I think that Prime did do some sexual harassment. No, I don't think that makes Prime a bad person. I believe him when he said that he is not good at reading social cues and he's a dummy. And that doesn't negate the sexual harassment necessarily, but I also believe Kat. I believe her and I stand by her, and I think it is deeply, deeply unfortunate that the majority of this community just embarked on a weird witch hunt fueled by destiny, and that sounded weirdly poetic, but yeah, I wish we could just have more conversations like the one Chat and I just had. Y'all are real great. I thank you, by the way, for giving me the time to lay out this entire presentation, because I've been thinking about it a lot over the past several days, and I'm really happy that I could get this off my chest to talk about, because I hope that maybe this segment can help people understand what is and is not sexual harassment and do better. Because at the end of the day, that's all you can really ask of anybody. Do better.